Ladies, let's get real for a second. Too many incredible women are walking around heartbroken, confused, and drained, not because they weren't enough, but because they forgot these 5 truths. When you meet someone who excites you, who makes your heart race and gives you butterflies, it's easy to start bending. At first, it's subtle. You tell yourself, I'm just being understanding. You ignore something that bothered you. You downplay a feeling. You silence your voice a little just to keep the peace. You want to be seen as easygoing, flexible, low-man tool, but slowly you start adjusting your boundaries. And before you realize it, you're molding yourself to fit into his life instead of checking if he fits into yours. What many people don't realize is that attraction often comes with a deep desire to impress. You want him to see you as valuable, so when he cancels plans last minute, you say it's fine. When he makes a joke that doesn't sit right, you laugh it off. When he crosses a line, you move the line, and every time you do, it chips away at your self-worth, not because he took it from you, but because you gave it away in the hope that doing so would make him stay. But here's the reality. A man doesn't fall in love with a woman who abandons herself for him. He falls for the woman who knows who she is and refuses to be anything less. Your standards are not a test for him to pass. They are an invitation for the right person to rise. When you lower them to make things easier, you don't just compromise the relationship, you compromise yourself. And the problem is, once you start negotiating your values, it never ends. Today it's a skip date, tomorrow it's emotional unavailability. A few months down the line, you're wondering why you feel so disconnected and frustrated. But you don't realize that it started the moment you decided to prioritize his comfort over your clarity. The moment you started saying yes when your soul screamed no. Here's the truth. Men respect women who respect themselves. When you hold your boundaries with grace and certainty, you teach him how to treat you. You show him that your time is precious, that your energy isn't handed out to someone who hasn't earned it, that being in your life is a privilege, not an entitlement. And if he's the right man, he will respect the standard, not resent it. Because a man who truly wants to be with you doesn't ask you to shrink. He wants to rise to meet you where you are. So if a man is put off by your standards, let him go. If he's uncomfortable with your clarity, he's not your person. You were not born to walk on eggshells just to keep someone else feeling secure. You are allowed to want what you want, expect consistency, and stand firm in what you deserve, even if it makes someone else uncomfortable. That's not selfish, that's self-respect. And it's the kind of energy that doesn't just attract a man, it attracts the right one. In the beginning of a relationship, it's easy to get swept away. He texts and your heart jumps. He wants to see you, and suddenly your whole schedule clears. You start imagining your future together before you even fully understand he's present. It feels exciting, intoxicating even, to be so consumed by someone. But slowly, without realizing it, you start revolving around him. He becomes the sun in your solar system, and everything else, your friends, your passions, your goals, your time alone, becomes less important, like distant planets fading into the background. The danger in making a man the center of your universe isn't just that you lose your balance. It's that you lose your identity. You begin living reactively instead of intentionally. Your days depend on his availability. Your mood depends on his attention. You start measuring your value by how much he desires you, texts you, wants to be around you. That kind of dependency doesn't create closeness. It creates pressure. It suffocates the relationship and drains your emotional energy. But men aren't drawn to women who orbit them. They're drawn to women who have their own gravity, their own life, joy, and direction. When you have a full life outside the relationship, you bring more to it. You're not relying on him to fill your time, validate your worth, or be your everything. You have passions that light you up, friends who remind you of who you are, a life that feels meaningful with or without him. That's attractive. That's what creates respect. Because a man doesn't want to feel like he is your purpose. He wants to feel like he's part of something with purpose. What often happens is that when a woman gives everything to a man too soon, she thinks it will bond them, that the more she shows she's all in, the more he'll feel secure and reciprocate. But the opposite usually happens. The more space she gives up in her life, the less he has to earn. And when he doesn't have to earn it, he stops valuing it. This isn't about playing games or withholding affection. It's about maintaining your wholeness, about remembering that your life didn't start when he showed up and it won't end if he leaves. When you make him the center, you set yourself up for emotional chaos. Every high and low becomes a reaction to his behavior. That roller coaster isn't love. It's instability disguised as passion. The strongest relationships are built on two people who are whole on their own and choose to grow together, who bring value into each other's lives rather than try to become each other's source of value. You don't need to be everything for him. You just need to be everything for you, because the moment you start building a life you love, one that he can witness, respect, and be part of, you stop chasing validation and start attracting connection, real, grounded, lasting connection. There's a moment in almost every relationship where something feels off. It might be subtle, a change in tone, a missed call that doesn't sit right, a comment that makes your stomach twist, but you feel it deep down, you know. But instead of listening to that quiet voice, you silence it. You tell yourself you're overthinking, you excuse the behavior, you focus on how good things were last weekend or how sweet he was that one time, and convince yourself that maybe you're just being too sensitive. Ignoring red flags isn't about being naive. Often it's about hope. Hope that things will get better. Hope that he'll change. Hope that what you felt was just a one-time thing. And more than that, it's about fear. Fear that if you really looked at the truth, you'd have to make a hard choice, that you might lose the relationship you've invested so much in. So you choose to overlook, to wait it out, to see what happened. But here's what always happens. The red flag you ignore becomes the reason you suffer later. The small lie you brushed off becomes a pattern. The lack of effort turns into emotional neglect. The controlling comment becomes manipulation. These things don't usually hit all at once. They show up slowly, quietly, like a leak in the ceiling that you pretend isn't there until one day the roof caves in. The problem isn't that you didn't see it, it's that you didn't want to believe it. But the truth has a way of resurfacing, no matter how deep you bury it. And the longer you avoid it, the more attached you become, the more difficult it is to walk away, because now your heart is in it, your time, your dreams, and letting go feels like failure. But ignoring red flags doesn't prevent heartbreak, it just delays it. It keeps you stuck in a situation where you're constantly questioning yourself, trying to decode mixed signals, convincing yourself to stay. Listening to red flags isn't about being judgmental or overly critical. It's about honoring your intuition. It's about having the courage to ask yourself, if this never changed, would I be okay staying? It's about protecting your peace and your future even when your heart wants to hold on. You deserve a relationship that makes you feel safe, seen, and respected, not one that keeps you second-guessing your worth. And sometimes walking away from a person you love is the most self-loving thing you can do. You don't need to wait until the damage is irreparable to take action. The earlier you honor what you feel, the more power you have to choose something better. That inner voice, it's not trying to ruin your happiness, it's trying to protect it. It's trying to remind you that your standards, your well-being, and your peace matter. Don't ignore it. Just because it's inconvenient, listen. It always knows. One of the most common traps women fall into in relationships is the belief that if they just give enough, they'll finally feel loved. You show up, support him, cook for him, make sacrifices, bend over backward, thinking if you keep proving your value, one day he'll turn around, recognize it, and choose you wholeheartedly. But love isn't a transaction. It's not earned by effort. It's not a prize given to the one who gives the most. When you start operating from that mindset, you lose yourself in the process. Overgiving often doesn't come from generosity. It comes from fear. Fear that you're not enough as you are. Fear that if you stop giving, he'll lose interest. Fear that if you just do a little more, maybe you'll finally be secure in the relationship. But the truth is, the more you overextend, the more you teach someone that you don't need much in return, and instead of being appreciated for all you do, you start feeling invisible. The more you give without reciprocation, the more you feel resentful, unvalued, and emotionally drained. A man doesn't fall in love because of how much you pour into him. He falls in love with how he feels about himself when he's with you. When he sees a woman who values herself enough not to give endlessly to someone who hasn't earned that place in her life, he respects her. That kind of self-respect is magnetic. But when he sees a woman who gives everything, her time, energy, attention, loyalty, without boundaries, he may take it, but he won't treasure it. Not because he's cruel, but because you've made it too easy. You've made yourself available in ways he never had to work for. Healthy love doesn't ask you to exhaust yourself. It doesn't require that you keep proving your worth. It sees your value even in silence, even when you do less, even when you choose yourself first. If the only way to feel secure with someone is to constantly give more, you're not in love, you're in survival mode. You're trying to win something that was never meant to be a competition. There's a difference between giving and overgiving. Giving comes from a full cup. It's joyful, it's mutual, it flows naturally. Overgiving comes from scarcity. It's forced, it's anxious. It's rooted in the belief that love must be earned, not simply received. And when you're stuck in that cycle, you'll always feel like you're falling short no matter how much you give. The right relationship won't make you feel like you have to work for affection. It will feel peaceful, balanced, and safe. You won't have to beg for love with your actions. You won't have to lose yourself to gain someone else. Real love is not built on how much you give. It's built on how much you value yourself while giving. Because when you know your worth, you don't overgive. You give wisely, selectively, to someone who meets you with the same energy, the same effort, and the same respect. Falling in love with potential is one of the easiest and most seductive traps in relationships. You meet someone who isn't quite where they should be emotionally, financially, or personally, but you see glimmers of greatness. Maybe he's kind when he wants to be. Maybe he talks about his big dreams, the man he wants to become, and you believe him. You believe in what could be. So you stay, not because of who he is today, but because of who you hope he'll become tomorrow. The problem is, potential isn't real. It's an idea, a vision you create in your head based on pieces of a person, not the whole. You fall for his ambition, not his action. You hold on to the way he treats you when things are good and ignore how often he disappears when things get tough. You romanticize the best parts of him and try to convince yourself that the rest is temporary, that with time, with love, with patience, he'll grow. Here's the truth. People don't change because you see their potential. They change because they choose to. Staying in a relationship based on potential is exhausting because it constantly requires you to explain away reality. You're always waiting for him to step up, to be consistent, to finally follow through. And while you're waiting, you're also doing, you're encouraging, supporting, making excuses to your friends, justifying your own unhappiness because he's trying. But trying isn't the same as doing, and hope isn't a strategy for building a life with someone. When you stay with someone for who they could be, you're not loving them, you're loving a fantasy. And fantasies don't pay attention to how you feel in the relationship right now. They make you overlook the anxiety, the confusion, the moments where you feel alone, even when you're together. They make you cling to what's possible and ignore what's present. But what you settle for today becomes your reality tomorrow. And if the present version of him isn't showing up, isn't consistent, isn't emotionally available, that's who you're actually in a relationship with. Loving someone's potential often turns into a full-time job. You become his motivator, his counselor, his cheerleader. You start carrying the weight of the relationship, thinking if you just stay long enough, he'll catch up. But love shouldn't feel like labor. It should feel like partnership. If you're the only one doing the emotional heavy lifting, it's not love, it's a project. And you weren't born to be someone's project manager. You deserve someone who is already showing up, who already makes you feel seen, safe, and supported. Someone whose actions match his words, whose presence brings peace, not confusion. Don't waste years waiting for a version of someone that may never arrive, because while you're investing in his potential, you're neglecting your own, and you deserve a love that doesn't require hope as a substitute for fulfillment. Sometimes we want someone so badly that we start bargaining with ourselves. We start convincing ourselves that a little chaos is worth it. That the constant overthinking, the anxiety, the second guessing, it's just part of being in love. You tell yourself no relationship is perfect and slowly begin to accept discomfort as normal. But there's a difference between working through challenges and sacrificing your inner peace just to keep someone around. And the moment you start choosing their presence over your own peace, you begin to lose yourself. It often starts subtly. You feel tense when his name pops up on your phone, not excited because you're bracing for another confusing conversation or unexplained shift in energy. You start questioning your instincts, walking on eggshells, adjusting your tone, your words, your needs, all just to avoid conflict. You might even convince yourself that this is what being close to someone feels like. But peace is not the absence of problems. It's the presence of clarity, safety, emotional consistency. And when that's missing, you're not in a relationship, you're in survival mode. There's this dangerous idea that if someone is in your life, they must be meant to be there, that their physical presence validates their emotional role. But presence alone means nothing if it brings confusion, exhaustion, or instability. Love isn't supposed to feel like a roller coaster you can't get off. It's supposed to ground you, to bring you back to yourself. If you feel more lonely lying next to someone than you do alone, that's not love. That's emotional erosion. And here's the truth many avoid. It's possible to miss someone and still be better off without them. You can love someone deeply and still recognize that their presence is costing you too much. Your peace is not a luxury, it's a requirement. It's the baseline that allows you to function, thrive, and show up as your best self. And any relationship that constantly pulls you away from that is too expensive, no matter how strong the connection, how great the chemistry, or how much history you share. When you trade your peace for someone's presence, you're telling yourself that your emotional well-being is a fair price to pay for not being alone. But being alone in peace is always better than being connected in chaos, because peace brings clarity. And clarity brings strength, and strength brings better choices. You start seeing people for who they are, not for who you hope they'll become. You start valuing how you feel in someone's presence over how much you wish they would stay. You deserve a love that enhances your peace, not one that threatens it. A love where you can breathe deeply, speak freely, rest fully. Anything less will slowly wear you down, not all at once, but piece by piece. Don't ignore that feeling in your gut that says, this isn't safe for my spirit. Listen to it, trust it, because the most beautiful kind of love is the one that feels like home, not like a battlefield. At the heart of everything we've talked about, every principle, every warning, every truth, is one simple, powerful idea. You are worthy. Worthy of love that doesn't ask you to shrink, worthy of a relationship that honors your standards, protects your peace, and meets you with equal energy. You don't need to abandon your values to be chosen. You don't need to overgive to be loved. You don't need to stay for what could be when what is doesn't feel right. Real love doesn't come from losing yourself in someone else. It comes from being so deeply rooted in who you are that the right person sees you clearly and chooses you fully for it. So let go of the habits that keep you stuck, the beliefs that make you question your worth, and the people who only show up when it's convenient. And from this moment forward, choose you. Because the more you honor your value, the less willing you'll be to settle for anything that doesn't. That's not just how you keep him hooked, that's how you keep you whole.